everyone, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to Relevant Jukebox. And so 2019 is finally coming down to a close. We're in December now, so you know what that means. Everybody's going to be putting out their lists of their favorite records of the year. And yeah, man, 2019 was a really fantastic year for music in my opinion, and I have a lot of records that I am excited to talk about. But before I get into my top 50 album of the year list, I wanted to shout out a few records here that didn't make it into my list, but I still really enjoyed, still really think it's worth your time to check out. And yeah, stay tuned for my top EP and my top 50 albums of the year list that I'm gonna have coming out soon. But for now, I'm just gonna list off 10 records here in like a gauntlet style. Let's go. So Sharon Van Etten dropped Remind Me Tomorrow pretty early on in the year, and I thought it was a really fantastic singer-songwriter record. She kind of changed it up a little bit on here, and there's a lot more elements of electronic music, lots of synths on here. It was also produced by John Coglington. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the direction that she took on this one. It's a little spooky. There's a lot of cool textures woven in. And if you're a Sharon Van Etten fan, I'd say you gotta check it out. It's another solid album from her. So next up was the newest album from Anamanaguchi, USA. They combine elements of like chiptune and indie pop on here in a pretty engaging way with some sticky hooks. And honestly, at times it kind of feels like you're going down this slide that's made out of like candy and like confetti or something. It's pretty awesome. Next up was the newest album that was highly anticipated debut of Petras, Clarity. 2019 was like the year for pop music, I think, and this was a pretty solid one that came out in the middle of the year. Maybe not the most cutting edge album, but there's some pretty well written songs on here. Petras has a really awesome voice and some sticky hooks all over this thing. And yeah, it just has me really excited to see what she's gonna do in the future on a follow-up from this one. Next one was the newest release from Solange, When I Get Home. This album I think might have divided some of her fan base here. She went for a turn for more of like the dark and dreary on this one and got a little more experimental, which I do appreciate the risks that she took here, which I could totally see some people not being as much of a fan and seeing it not paying off. But there was like a really uneasy feeling that was running it throughout this record, and she kind of leans more on the hip-hop side of things over here. I mean, I don't know if I like it as much as The Seat at the Table, but I still really dug it. I think you should check it out. Next up was the newest album from Stephen Malkmus, Groove Denied. Now, this one was like Stephen Malkmus off the deep end here, when he's toying a little bit with electronic influences, and a lot of the sounds on here are kind of cartoony, very Kraftwerk inspired, but the rest of the album is almost like his Jix demos or something woven in. But Stephen Malkmus being one of my favorite songwriters, I mean, I still really enjoyed this. I just wish he did a little bit more with those electronic influences on it, but there's definitely still some gold buried in the second half here if you're a Pavement fan. Next up was the self-titled debut mixtape of Slater. Now, this one kind of caught me by surprise. I had heard a lot of the singles that were from this that were leading up to the release, and she kind of comes off to me like this Pornhub cam girl Britney Spears or something. But it is pretty compelling, and the production's really cool. It's really thick and heavy, almost MIA inspired a bit, but still has a lot of that like bubblegum bass going on. And yeah, maybe not like the most polished release, but I still really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Slater's gonna do next on a follow-up. Next up was the newest release from Denzel Curry's Zoo. This record here was short, but it is just banger after banger after banger after banger. Denzel actually gets a little more personal on here. He also weaves in some really sticky hooks, like on the track Ricky, and the production gets really aggressive at times. I think if you're a Denzel Curry fan, you gotta hear this. You probably already have, though, and it just has me looking forward to another Denzel Curry album, hopefully next year. Next up was the newest album from JSON, Anak Ko. And yeah, I mean, I've been really enjoying JSON's output since she signed to Polyvinyl a couple of years back, and this new album here is a pretty colorful indie rock singer-songwriter release. It kind of has like a slight bit of like a Death Cab influence hanging over it, but it can also be pretty soul-crushing at times, like on the track Peace Out. But again, more solid material coming from JSON. Next up is the newest album from Chelsea Wolfe, Birth of Violence. Now, this record was kind of like Chelsea going back to her roots here. It's more organic with all acoustic instrumentation, and I think that actually works in her favor because I really like her voice, and it's on full display on this record, and it does have that like spooky, kind of smoky, indie folky atmosphere that you'd expect from Chelsea. Probably not her best album, but again, I still really enjoyed it. Just like I like this side of her music more than like the heavier, sludgier side. And rounding out this batch of albums was the newest release from Mount Eerie, Lost Wisdom Part 2. Phil Elverum just continues to deliver some of the most personal and intimate music I think you can find out there. Now, this new album here was not as harrowing and crushing as A Crow Looked at Me, and it's not really as grandiose as his stuff with the microphones. However, if you really dug his album Dawn, I think you should check this one out. There's some really solid songs on it, and again, I mean, you can't really get a listening experience like this from many other other artists, in my opinion. So yeah, that rounds out a batch of 10 records that weren't gonna make it onto my list, but I think you should check out. I really hope you enjoyed this video, got some good suggestions out of it. And as always, thank you for watching. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit a like down below. And if you want more content from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Peace.